What happens when a relationship ends? What is the purpose of the breakup? And not so much what is the purpose of the breakup. What is happening in this space that you suddenly find yourself in when it feels like there is extreme emptiness and loneliness? Perhaps a sense of confusion, not knowing where to go next. If you experience these feelings with the ending of a relationship, it's important to know that this is not loss that you are actually experiencing, although from a very physical standpoint and what society would tell us, it would say, yes, you're experiencing the absence now of the relationship, which is going to bring a sense of shame and judgment upon you. What is truly happening when you are experiencing these feelings and these emotions of loss is that you are searching for your true self. Essentially, you have been launched into a space of pure consciousness. It is causing you to ask the question, who am I? Where am I? And those particular questions lend to this sense of almost an existential crisis. And yet it's not that you are necessarily going through an existential crisis, but to have something in your life and then to have this thing removed, it's not the person that was removed. It was the sense of relationship which was removed that you are reacting to. From the outside, it looks like the reason you're suffering is because this person is no longer there. Truly, what is happening is that within you, you held space for this relationship. And relationship is truly, simply in many ways, a connection with some other thing other than yourself. So we can have relationship to a job, we can have relationship to a community, we can have relationship to family. Of course, when it is an intimate partner, it becomes most up in our awareness, where we could also say it's most painful. We have the greatest sense of quote unquote loss around it. And this is why it feels so traumatizing. But to know what is truly happening is that you are renegotiating the sense of self, of who you are, in relationship to a relationship with something else. And what you are necessarily then being asked to decide or decipher or figure out for yourself is who you were in relationship to that other person. But also, who are you in relation to a relationship? Ultimately, what this is asking you, where it brings you to, is who are you in relation to the greater context of your world? Who are you in relation to your creator or creation energy, which you perceive to be something that is outside of you? Essentially, what is occurring is that you are being asked to look at how you define yourself in relation to other things. In this purest and also what feels like the most painful state for a human to exist in now is where you are actually then given the opportunity to dig deep within, to find the answers to these kinds of questions, which we would not normally ask unless we were put in the situation unexpectedly, not by choice. The ending of something so personal, something that was so close to us, something that we came to perhaps rely on, which gave us a sense of comfort and safety, having that no longer be in our physical experience causes us to have to ask these questions. There's really no other way around it. Of course, we can avoid looking at the situation. We can cover it up. The feelings can be too painful that we do not want to deal with them and look at them, and that is perfectly okay as well. There is nothing that says that you have to dive into this, and yet sometimes we can feel as if we have no other choice but to be here in this pit of pain and suffering. No human would by choice ask these questions and dive into this simply out of curiosity, because it is a very painful question to ask, because we do not feel that we truly have answers to this. This is why we avoid doing healing work or going to therapy or uncovering our inner wounds or our inner child experience. We're not quite sure what we're going to find, and even if we do find something, we don't know what we would do about it. It's natural as a human to want to avoid this experience and to not be in this place. So when we have something that was very dear to us removed from our lives, whether we did it, we initiated it, or it happened to us, there will be a sense of void, of absence, of loss, of a hole that needs to somehow be filled up. And yet really you're being asked to look deeper into your own self, to define yourself. So this empty space that we are feeling with the loss of someone, with the ending of a relationship. If you see this blue box here, that's shaded in a bit. This was you in relationship. When you are no longer in relationship, what you are essentially experiencing is you, as represented by the shading, these squiggly lines here, without the container of the box. The box was the boundary line. It was known boundaries. Within relationship, this is what we do. This is how I show up. This is how you show up. This is what it looks like when we come together. In a relationship, when we are apart, this is how it feels. This is what we do. When we come back together, this is how we connect. This is how we talk. This is how we share. All of those things, we would then say, if you look at the second column with the blue and the orange then represents how you navigate within that box. So that when the relationship ends, you are not just left with yourself, which in the first column would be the blue shading or the blue wavy lines. Actually, what you are left with are two separate things to decipher. The blue wavy lines and the orange wavy lines. The orange wavy lines here represent how you navigated in relation to the other person within the context of the box. The box, again, represents this particular relationship. So when relationship ends, what it causes you to do is to define what that box or that container as the relationship meant to you. What was good about it? What was bad about it? And ultimately the question of what do you want to change about it? In addition, you, as these blue shaded lines or these blue wavy lines, are given the opportunity to look at yourself. How did you navigate within the relationship? What did you feel? What did the relationship provide you with? Did you ask for what you needed? Did you receive what you felt you needed? Solely from your own perspective of who you are and whether or not your needs were met, whether or not you felt you gave the relationship a fair chance. Did you invest as deeply as you could have? Did you feel you were investing too much for what was comfortable for you? And ultimately, the orange lines then represent the other thing that you were interacting with. In this case, when we're speaking of a breakup, this would be the other person in this relationship, the other person that existed within this container of relationship with you. What is it that you liked and appreciated about the other person? What is it that you didn't like or appreciate about the other person? Were they showing up fully for themselves in the relationship? were they showing up fully in comparison to what you felt or how you felt you were showing up? So a breakup will essentially provide you with 3 different areas to look at. And the mistake that most of us make is to think of a breakup as the ending of one big thing. And whatever emotions we are feeling, we tend to try to put something on top of them to not feel the pain so strongly. And really what we are doing when we do that is dismissing the truth of what occurred in the relationship. In many ways, when we go through a breakup, we make it even worse because we don't understand what we are supposed to be doing and looking at and extracting, finding the wisdom that we can take from that experience and then applying it to our next relationship or next situation. Ultimately, when you find yourself outside of relationship now, you are being given the opportunity to see from a different perspective. You, as the observer, can now observe your behavior within the relationship in a way that you could not understand or see yourself while you were in the relationship. So this ultimately is providing you with the opportunity to understand yourself and what was going on in the relationship in order to redefine what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want more of, what you want less of, where you didn't give enough of yourself, where you could have put in more effort, where you gave too much, where you needed to allow the other person to step up more. These things can be very challenging to understand when we are so enmeshed and connected within that container of the relationship itself. We are so concerned with trying to make the relationship work, which would be about focusing on the box itself rather than focusing on the components that are within the box. The other mistake that we tend to be prone to is that we mistake the relationship as just the box. We are so concerned with trying to keep this box upright and in place in order to feel safe that we disregard or we forget or we don't perhaps even realize that the most important pieces are these 2 colors, the orange and the blue, that are trying to find a way to coexist peacefully, trying to find a way that serves both people to be happy and fulfilled and at peace in relation to one another. And so we have a tendency to focus on keeping the box stable and upright at the expense of the very 2 things that created the box in the first place. The box does not exist without these 2 components, and yet we think first the box exists and then we climb into it, and that the box must therefore define these 2 colors and what these 2 colors do within the box. But what if instead we look at the relationship and the container in which the relationship happens as a circle or as a sphere? How then would those 2 colors change to exist within that framework? Wouldn't it be true that the colors or those 2 tones then must morph to fit into a sphere shape rather than a square shape? Yet again, the mistake that we have a tendency to make is that we must be in a certain shape in order for this relationship to exist. We must fit this particular mold in order to find peace and happiness and stillness with one another. The truth is that relationship can be whatever and however you desire it to be. But the relationship is not defined by the outside in. The relationship truly is defined by first defining what each of these colors mean. How do you want to show up in relationship? What are you willing to give? What are you unwilling to do or give or be? What do you expect from another person? And also, can you recognize the other person is also human with their own expectations, needs, and desires for not only themselves, but the other person as well, who would be you. So where you expect that the other would do and be a certain way, you also need to understand you have to make those allowances for the other of you. And with this understanding, where will you choose now to step into with another person? So when you experience a breakup and a loss of a relationship, it is calling you to redefine. And we redefine something by first looking at what we have, what we had, what we lost, what we gained, and then putting all of that back together into what we truly want and desire in our lives for ourselves, first and foremost, but then also understanding the other has the right to ask those same things of us. And then taking all of these things, we start to combine these colors once again. And what we ultimately want to be doing is continuously asking this question. When I am connecting with this other person together here in this relationship, what does this now mean for me? So that you slowly start to re-understand relationship from a different perspective. The relationship does not define you. You define the relationship based on what you want for yourself. And so when a relationship has ended, when we feel we are in utter darkness and grief and loss and pain and suffering, can you start to separate out these three pieces of you? This pain and the suffering is really this combination of all these different things. You, the other person, your experiences together, and your idea of relationship is all balled up into one big feeling of pain and suffering right now, or confusion, and loss, and grief, and sadness, and bewilderment, and perhaps even feelings of relief, perhaps even happiness at times. And the reason is that you are trying to sort out all of these things, but not understanding that you are really dealing with at least 3 different components that are separate, but in relationship, they all come together and look like one big thing. So have compassion for yourself and start with where you are at. Allow yourself to feel the things that you are feeling, even if you don't understand what they mean. Do your best to try not to fight the emotions, but also don't hold on to the initial interpretation that you want to give to those emotions. Allow the emotions to take you deep into the truth of what was happening within this relationship, in order that you can come to new ideas, new wisdom, new conclusions about yourself and your ideas about relationship, in order to bring this into your present or into your future, to create something much more solid for yourself, a more solid understanding of who you are and who you desire to be within relationship. Without breakup and without loss, we would never be able to face these things inside of ourselves. And so in many ways, it is a gift to be given this time and this space to get to know ourselves better. The relationship was not the problem, and even the other person was not the problem. Our perception of what is happening in relationship and how we see relationship and how we understand what relationship actually can provide us with is a bit skewed. And so if we come from the perspective of understanding that relationship gives us a boundary in which to morph and change and choose and learn and grow, we will have more compassion for ourselves and also the other person in our lives. that we can truly learn from loss and breakup and heartache in order to create this life of our dreams. So if we can allow ourselves not to blame the relationship and not to blame the other person, and instead utilize the gift that is given here, this is where we start to drop the baggage of our past. In fact, we don't even create baggage to begin with when we understand from this perspective. It frees your heart, it frees your soul, it frees your mind from needing to find blame, from needing to find reasons. The only true reason is, what did you learn? How did you grow? Where did you fail to see? Where did you fail to learn and fail to grow that you can look at now and understand outside of relationship? These are things that you can work on your own in order that when you step into the next relationship, you are better informed, more aware, more conscious of what you are truly wanting and needing. Therefore, then more able to fully communicate that to another, because you now understand it within yourself. And also more able to have a deeper sense of compassion and understanding for the other person as well. And it is from this place that we will truly start to nurture one another in relationship and truly start to understand the power and the healing capacity of relationship. Relationship is a container in which we learn and grow ourselves. The gift is that we get to do it with another, so long as we understand this is what we are doing, this is where we are going, and along the way we create a life and a future together. I'm sending you so much love. I know this can be a challenging time when we are in the midst of extreme loss and breakdown. But I hope that if you can start to separate these pieces, this thing that you feel all balled up in and all wrapped up in, that if you can start to see that the pain and suffering that you are feeling is more than just you. It is you balled up with all these different components of what relationship is. So if you can start to separate yourself and your experience and your feelings from the context of the other person and the container of relationship, you will immediately start to feel better. Because when you cannot separate your own self from the relationship, essentially what that means is that you are looking at every other relationship that has been in your life. You are carrying all of that in your heart right now. So you're not just feeling the pain of this one particular relationship. It is all relationships, going back to the original relationships you had with your parents or caregivers in early life. Truly, truly, you can work with this space that you find yourself in now in such a magical way that will help you extract, untangle, and loosen the grip that these feelings have on you. I send you so much love, sending you so many blessings.